Everyone, welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today I am really pleased to have with me on the line Nancy Giere. Nancy is a virtual training consultant with over 25 years of experience. She has worked with Fortune 500 companies worldwide to help them implement virtual training for their teams so they can generate leads and increase ROI. With an ability to draw people in through storytelling and a sharp sense of humor, Nancy captures her audience's attention. And her one big tip is if you want to motivate change, you need to identify the personal side of it. We're going to learn how to do that using some storytelling techniques and also just how to make your webinars and your presentations just a bit more interesting. Nancy, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad to be here today.
So, this is going to be a lot of fun. I would like to hear a little bit about your background. Basically, as a consultant who helps people with presentations, I can see how you get involved with a lot of different companies that have different priorities. That some are selling to businesses, others are selling to consumers. Can you please tell us a little bit about your background and what makes you so awesome?
Well, I've been working in the training and development industry really for my whole professional career. So I've had the opportunity to work with companies of all different sizes and all different areas of expertise. So, one in any given week, I'll be working on sales training for a custom home builder. I might be working on supply chain management. I might be working on sales. So it's kind of all over the place. So I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about how all different types of businesses work and have been able to see a lot of different types of patterns that emerge. And one thing that can be very consistent is when people are working on presentations, whether it's live in person or virtual like we are today, that there's this desire to share every fact that they've ever learned about anything and put that out there. And then they lose the opportunity to connect with people because they forget about telling a really good story. Because if you can tell a really good story, that's what's going to connect in people's minds. And then they're going to be able to relate the story to whatever your key idea is that you're trying to get across.
I love it. Just today, I came across a new commercial for AT&T. And what's really the funny thing about it was, they're promoting their AT&T fiber program in more cities. And they got Mila Kunis and Demi Moore, who both happen to share the same husband, right? Because Demi was married to
There's a story.
yeah, right. And so I'm not going to spoil it. Go look it up, right? But what was funny about it was that they used this really funny circumstance that these two women happen to be at different times married to the same guy to convey humor through that through that commercial. And that to me was incredibly memorable, right? Because
Right.
that's something you're just going to be looking at, you're going to be like, geez, I'm going to remember AT&T now going forward for a good long time. Let's talk a little bit about, how you come up with that, right? Because, sometimes it's not always easy to be humorous, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not always, sometimes it's not even politically correct, let's be honest, right?
Right.
That could be a minefield in and of itself. How do you how do you come up with these stories? Like, how do you come up with, like with the plan to help a company get to a place where they can tell a powerful and intriguing story and, entertain a little bit at the same time?
I think one of the most classic story models to bring in is tied into the hero's journey. And where companies I think can go wrong with it is if they brag about themselves as if they are the hero of the story. When in fact, what they want to do is show their customer as the hero and that they were that, the Obi-Wan, the sage, the one that gave them the guidance that helped them to move into being heroic. So I remember a long time ago, I was working with someone and we did a video, and the guy was really stiff on camera, but he felt he had to be the person on camera. He needed to be the face of the company. And it was one of these classic situations where as soon as the camera went on him, he became very, very boring and could not come up with a good story about the impact that energy efficiency happened to have on this company. We're going out to the parking lot, and the guy who was kind of the second, and he was really doing all the coordination, and he was the guy to get the sandwiches and do those types of things. He said, "You know, what's been so great about our work with you guys is that we have been able to keep jobs in this little town in Wisconsin instead of having to send them south of the border." And that was the story that needed to be told about how the work that they were doing made a big difference. But the actor, the talent, who was not so talented, couldn't bring himself to go there because he got so nervous. So as I moved forward and I started working with people and working with stories, and before they're going to actually go on camera to do a video, I like to interview them and just ask them a lot of questions about their personal life and get them comfortable with me so that when the camera starts to roll, they don't freeze up and turn into a robot that no one wants to hear from.
I love that example because that is basically me, right? Um, Put me in front of somebody, you and I can talk about this for a day and a half, right? Do this by myself, like please shoot me now, right? Because I just cannot, I like just to stare at the camera and like just like talk to myself. It just it sounds boring to me. I don't see how I can get to be as animated or as intriguing. At least I don't see it, right? Other people of course see it, but when I'm trying to record things, especially by myself, right, where I'm not interacting with someone, where I just need to look directly into the camera and see what's going on, it's like, wow, that is really really hard, to do, whether it's just speaking, to record the audio or to do the video as well.
Right.
And like I find that I'm not alone. Like the more I come out and tell people that this is a problem that I have, you can either be like, okay, Jeff, get over yourself, right? Or maybe with a little bit of coaching, I found that for me in my business, it's these interview styles, right? Get me in front of somebody, we can talk for hours. And what I find is, like also they get a good feel for like the personality that I'm trying to convey, not just who Jeff is, but also what my company is, and the vibe that I'm going for, right?
Well, and think about it, storytelling and conversation have been around as long as mankind has been on the planet, right?
Right.
And when you're in conversation, you tell me a little bit about you, which is part of your story, and then I've got how does my story relate to yours? And we can get, it's easy to get trapped in not really telling a good story. I was just working on something the other day. I put together a speech. I'm involved in Toastmasters, and it was for a competition. And I wanted to talk about how we've been through this very disruptive time, COVID-19, but looking at what were some of the positive aspects that came from it. Well, one thing here is, first of all, too soon, because some people really experienced a lot of tragedy, and you can't let that go. But I started telling this like I was giving an opinion piece, like I was being interviewed on a news show, and I was just giving my opinion about what happened, and had a little story about how restaurants in my town have all upped their game and outdoor dining is now fantastic. They would have never done that if this wouldn't have happened. Well, now I got some feedback and I stepped back from it and thought, how can I make this more personal? And I'm going to revamp it to tell the story of people in my family and how over time, whatever time they lived in, they made the most of what they had. They dealt with the good circumstances and the bad circumstances. So talking about my grandfather, then I'll talk a little bit about my father. Then I'll eventually get to this time. And I think if I put it more in that context and make it more personal, I won't risk offending someone who will say, yeah, but people died. And people that were home, maybe they were in an abusive relationship and bad things happened to people. And how can you say this? So so sometimes you gotta try something out and get feedback and see how it lands and then improve it. So I just did that myself. Good lesson learned, good reminder for me, and a good when I'm thinking about working with people about, well, how do you personalize your story? And particularly now, we're on this small screen where people are used to being entertained. So, you know, it's a whole new world.
Well, that's really interesting that you bring that up because I definitely have, like my own opinions on how the pandemic has, played out in our lives. I was able to get married during the pandemic, and
Yay.
yeah, and I was able to do it without doing the big wedding because we couldn't invite anybody. So I'm like, okay,
Saved a little
great,
money, did you?
yeah, saved a little bit of money, but something, it was just our speed. And the courthouse wasn't letting anyone in, and it was just us. It was personal, it was intimate. So for me, that's a win, and that couldn't have happened otherwise, right? But at the same time, I also need to be cognizant that like a lot of people still needed to get up and and go to that courthouse and still work, and
Yeah,
we needed to be mindful of the sacrifices and the effort that they were putting in order to make sure that our lives would continue as well. And I think that's
exactly.
a real poignant reminder of, yeah, there were some really, really bad things that happened with this, but, some people managed to make something good of it. And I think it caused a lot of people to really do a lot of soul searching, even if it meant quitting their jobs, changing careers, changing relationships, right? Some of the stuff is like, well, if you needed a pandemic to do it, then, you know, try to
Yeah,
look at it on the bright side, you know?
we certainly had a lot of time for introspection.
Yeah, right.
It's
So,
like, what do I do now?
so I
I
want to,
guess
I want to switch gears here, to your one big tip, which is about, which is about, we titled it more about, creating evergreen webinars in particular. But I think this goes, also for presentations or storytelling,
yeah.
in general, right? Because there are a lot of ways that you can put your story together,
Mhm.
and by keeping, like you said, the hero's journey, it's not about what I've done to be the hero, right? It's about how I enable my clients to be the heroes in the, by using the services that that I'm able to provide to them. Let's
Right.
talk a little bit about how that works and how you would put that together, when creating a presentation. How does that work in your world?
What's interesting is any type of presentation, whether you're going to be live on a big stage, virtual, like we are now, or if something is going to be recorded and it's just you and the camera, there's a there's some things that are consistent no matter what you're doing. You just need to be mindful of the type of platform that your program is going to be on so that you design for that particular platform. One thing that I believe no matter what you're doing is you want to have a good structure, a way that you bring people in, you give them a sense of what's going to be happening, you let them know the journey that you're going to take them on, what they can expect from the program. So really what's in it for me, and then the next question for the audience is, and why should I care? And then really look at, do an outline of what are all of your key points, the key ideas that you want to get across, and do that one first, and then look at it and say, what's the best way for me to illustrate each of these ideas? What type of a visual do I need to put into place? Is this the spot for me to do a story or an example? And so you're really kind of doing these two structures in parallel. One is the structure of your content, and the other is the structure of your delivery. Then when you put those two together, that's what can give you really a winning program. And I'm a big believer in wherever you can tell a story, do so and then relate the story. Well, what does that mean? What's the lesson that people learn from the story? What's the key takeaway or the key action that they're going to take?
I'm curious if you can provide an example of how you helped a client go from, from A, which was, this boring, this is what we do and how we do it, to storytelling mode, creating that whole story brand and making it more engaging. But um I'm curious if you can put together something that really illustrates like what they were doing before, and what the net effect was after they improved that storytelling, opportunity, and it really helped out their business going forward.
Yeah. Because it's a big part of everything that we're doing. And I'm trying to come up with a real good concrete example for you. My mind has gone, whoosh, which can happen. I was going through and working on a project, and they had reams and reams of information about, well, these are all the strategies that you need in order to have a good negotiation. And we're looking at all of the information, and it was very dense and very heavy because it was all these tactics and a lot of psychology. And I was working through it with him, and I said, you've got a lot of great ideas, but it's hard for me to think about how to make this actionable, and I'm getting lost in the information. And I would imagine that this is one of the reasons why you're losing some of your audience along the way, because there's so much depth and so much detail, and it was very densely packed. It was like, how much information can I tell you about this topic in a very short period of time? So I'm going to just throw this all at you. So people got lost in it. So we stepped back and said, what is the need to know information? Let's work through if you could have people come up with 3 to 5 great tactics that they can use, what would those be? And then we walked through and we built out an example for each of the tactics so that people had something that they could anchor it to. And that's what made the big difference, and got rave reviews on the presentations after that, and more, follow on business, because there wasn't so much information thrown at them that they didn't know what to do. So they appreciated him much more after that.
I think the last thing people want is for somebody to read you their slides.
Yes.
That has got to
Well,
be
the
the
fonts
least
are often so small. What else are you going to do?
right. And it's like one of the things I used to do is, yeah, I'm guilty of that, maybe like 20 years ago, right? But one of the things I tried to do was try to keep my presentations as succinct as possible, right? The least amount of words, the least amount of visuals. Or if I am going to go for visuals, make sure that the headlines and the visuals don't overpower each other,
Right.
right? And I think when you do something like that, and you really try to convey, why is this interesting for you, right? As I'm presenting it, it makes for a much better presentation. It makes it a little bit more engaging, and it also allows you to really convey the point so that they don't just get lost in thinking like, okay, here I'm going to present numbers. Anyone can go and read, like a prospectus or anything like that, because
Right.
that's basically what these things are. What you really want to do is that you want to present the information as what makes this information important for me to engage with it right now, right? And I think that's the biggest part of whether you're creating a webinar, whether you're creating a presentation in front of people, whatever it is, you got to be engaging, right?
Mhm.
And if you're not, you're going to have to
Yeah.
rely on other crutches then. Maybe throw some background music in there,
I know. Yeah.
or maybe get a model to read it for you,
Or
whatever it is, right?
a
But you need
puppet
to
show. I
figure
don't
out,
know. Right.
yeah, puppet show. And like when you do something like that, like that's where the magic really comes across,
Mhm.
right? So I really appreciate you giving those examples. It really helps in terms, and I think that a lot of people need to hear this more and multiple times
Yes.
in order in order for it to really drive home. And if you really just sort of shift that tactic just a little bit, that'll really help.
And
So
another thing that can happen is there's this idea of, you know, I've got this information that I want to communicate, and it's almost, like the whole idea of, editing and things that end up on the cutting room floor, that you have to be willing to take information out, put it aside, and it's another opportunity for another day. It doesn't mean that because it's not in this presentation that you're never going to have the opportunity to say it. Sometimes I can come up with a really great joke, really great story, and I really want to use it. I'll be like, I can't do it in this one. But that's why I have this thing called a notebook to keep track of what I'm doing, so that these ideas don't get lost, and they can then resurface at the right day, the right time.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Nancy, can you please let everyone know how they can learn more about you and your business and how they can reach out to you directly?
Well, you can see my website. It's right under me there. So you can find me at nancygiere.com. That's my website. And if you go to that page, there is an opt-in there where you can get a free gift from me, which is my 8 strategies to create training that sells. And then I also am running a 5-day challenge next week about how to turn your expertise into profitable online courses. And I'd love to be able to share that link, Jeff. What's the best way to do that?
I'll make sure that it gets into the show notes
Okay, great.
as well as into the live notes as well.
Thank you.
So that's great. Thank you so much, Nancy. It's been a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time to share this with the audience, and just it's been a great conversation. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure.